In the Great Galactic Council Chamber, the humiliation of Earth was not subtle, it was deliberate, public, and carefully recorded for the entire galaxy to see. Alien leaders sat in their elevated seats, surrounded by glowing banners and ancient symbols of power, and they laughed openly as Earth's name appeared on the central display. Some called humans reckless. Others called them loud, unstable, too emotional to be trusted with serious power. A few delegates leaned forward just to make sure their insults were heard clearly by the cameras. They accused humanity of secretly militarizing space, of hiding weapons behind civilian routes, of being a threat to galactic order. Then came the demand, spoken slowly and confidently, as if it were already decided. Full inspections of all human war fleets. Immediate compliance. No discussion. The cameras zoomed in on the human delegation, waiting for anger, for protests, for raised voices. None came. The human delegates stood quietly, faces calm, eyes steady. They did not interrupt. They did not defend themselves. When the accusations ended, the lead human representative inclined his head slightly, a polite bow that confused the chamber for half a second. Then, without a word, the human delegation turned and walked out. The massive doors closed behind them with a low, echoing sound. For a heartbeat, the chamber was silent. Then the laughter exploded. Delegates mocked the silence, calling it surrender, calling it fear. Some joked that humans had finally learned their place. The council moved on to the next agenda item, convinced the matter was settled. What no one noticed at first was how quiet the galaxy itself was becoming. Within minutes of the session ending, long-range monitoring stations began reporting strange delays. Human patrol fleets, usually boring and predictable, stopped responding to routine pings. Operators assumed communication lag. Then more reports came in. A human cruiser docked at a well-known trade station failed to answer its scheduled status check. Nearby sensors showed the docking bay empty. The ship was gone. No jump signature. No departure notice. No alarms. At another system, a human carrier group listed as in orbit simply vanished from local scans. Station crews swore they had been there moments before. Analysts blamed sensor glitches. They recalibrated. The ships did not reappear. Across known space, the pattern spread quietly and rapidly. Human warships that had been visible for decades were no longer where they were supposed to be. Patrol routes showed nothing but empty lanes. Border defense markers went dark one by one, not violently, but cleanly, as if switched off by design. There were no explosions. No distress calls. No wreckage fields drifting through space. Humanity's fleets were not destroyed. They were simply absent. In council intelligence centers, junior analysts began exchanging nervous glances. Reports were flagged, then flagged again. Senior officers were called in. Systems were checked for cyber interference. Enemy action was suspected, then dismissed when no hostile movement could be detected. This was not an attack. This was something else. Human space itself went quiet. Communication channels that usually carried routine chatter fell silent. No denials came from Earth. No explanations. No angry broadcasts demanding respect. Humanity did not respond at all. By the time dawn broke on Earth, the truth could no longer be ignored. Every known human war fleet had disappeared. Not one or two. Not a sector. All of them. Fleets docked at visible stations, gone. Patrol groups assigned to border systems, gone. Even ceremonial guard ships that rarely moved were missing. The galaxy searched desperately for signs of retreat, for jump trails, for hidden rally points. There were none. Humanity had not pulled back into its own space. Humanity had stepped out of sight entirely. The mood across the galaxy shifted from confusion to unease. Allies of Earth began sending private messages, asking if this was some kind of exercise, some political move meant to embarrass the Council. They received no replies. Rival powers began quietly raising readiness levels, not because they feared immediate attack, but because the absence itself was frightening. An enemy you can see can be measured. An enemy you cannot locate cannot be planned against. Traders slowed their routes. Military patrols doubled in number. Still, nothing happened. Humanity did nothing. In the Galactic Council chamber, emergency whispers replaced laughter. Delegates demanded intelligence updates. Analysts admitted, with visible discomfort, that they had lost track of humanity's military entirely. Some insisted this proved human weakness, claiming Earth had dismantled its fleets to avoid inspections. Others were not so sure. A few older delegates, veterans of long-forgotten wars, felt something cold settle in their chests. Fleets did not vanish like this by accident. Not without chaos. Not without traces. This disappearance was too clean. Too complete. As hours passed, the silence grew heavier. Humanity did not attack. It did not negotiate. It did not plead. It did not even acknowledge the Council's demands. The galaxy waited for something to happen, any sign that would explain the impossible. None came. The Council realized, slowly and painfully, that mockery had triggered something they did not understand. Humanity had not been cornered. Humanity had stepped away from the board entirely. By the end of the cycle, one unsettling truth began to spread through military briefings and private conversations alike. If humanity's fleets were truly gone, then inspections were meaningless. Sanctions were useless. Threats had nowhere to land. And if humanity had not lost its fleets, if they had simply chosen to disappear, then the galaxy was facing a far more dangerous reality. A species capable of removing its entire military from observation, without warning, without effort, and without explanation. The stars themselves seemed quieter that night. No battles flared. No alarms rang. Yet every commander, every analyst, every council delegate felt the same unease pressing down on them. Humanity had vanished, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy something far more terrifying than open defiance. It had shown that when pushed, it did not argue. It did not shout. It did not fight on someone else's terms. It simply removed itself from reach. The first emotion the galaxy felt was not fear. It was denial, because accepting the truth meant admitting that everything they believed about humanity had been wrong. In intelligence centers across dozens of star systems, analysts stared at screens filled with empty space where human fleets had always been. They refreshed data. They recalibrated sensors. They accused one another of incompetence. Surely this was a system-wide glitch, a coordinated failure, anything but reality. Human fleets could not simply vanish. Not all of them. Not without a trace. And yet, every update confirmed the same impossible fact. There were no jump signatures. No energy wakes. No debris. No emergency beacons. Humanity's war fleets were gone as cleanly as if they had never existed at all. As the hours passed, denial cracked and panic leaked through. Council allies of Earth sent increasingly urgent messages, their tones shifting from curiosity to concern to outright fear. Where are your fleets? Is this some kind of protest? Are you under attack? The silence from human space remained absolute. Even civilian channels were quiet, stripped down to basic traffic control and emergency services, all military-linked communication sealed behind layers of encryption no one else could breach. To many, that silence felt louder than any threat broadcast. Humanity was not hiding in confusion. Humanity was choosing not to speak. In the Galactic Council, emergency sessions replaced scheduled debates. The same chamber that had echoed with laughter only hours before now felt cold and exposed. Delegates spoke in hushed voices, careful with their words, as if the room itself might be listening. Some demanded immediate sanctions against Earth, arguing that disappearance was an admission of guilt. Others warned that sanctions were meaningless if there was nothing left to pressure. A few quietly admitted what no one wanted to say aloud. If we can't see them, one delegate whispered, we can't stop them either. That sentence spread through the chamber like poison. Military commands across the galaxy reacted instinctively. Patrol schedules doubled. Fleets were recalled closer to core worlds. Defensive grids powered up. Yet every action felt pointless, because no one knew what they were defending against. Humanity was not advancing. No borders were crossed. No systems were threatened. The absence itself became the threat. Commanders realized they had trained their entire lives to fight visible enemies, not ghosts. The idea that a civilization could remove its entire military from observation shattered every doctrine they trusted. Rumors filled the gaps where facts refused to appear. Some claimed humanity had developed perfect cloaking technology, fleets hidden in plain sight. Others whispered about folded space storage, entire armadas compressed into impossible dimensions. A few went further, suggesting humans had left known space entirely, abandoning the galaxy as an act of protest. None of these theories could be proven. All of them made leaders sleep poorly, because every possibility carried the same terrifying conclusion. Humanity had options no one else did. On worlds near human space, civilians felt the tension in subtle ways. Trade convoys delayed departures. Insurance costs spiked overnight. Port authorities began denying docking permission to unfamiliar ships, afraid of provoking something unseen. People looked up at their skies more often, not because something was there, but because nothing was. The emptiness itself felt wrong, like a held breath that never released. Parents told their children to stay close. Soldiers checked weapons they might never fire. The galaxy waited, balanced on uncertainty. Inside the Council's Intelligence Directorate, a classified report circulated quietly, never meant for public release. It analyzed the disappearance not as retreat, but as doctrine. The conclusion was chilling in its simplicity. Humanity did not remove its fleets to avoid inspections. Humanity removed itself from leverage. Without fleets to inspect, the Council had no authority. Without visible targets, threats lost meaning. Humanity had stepped outside the game entirely, leaving the galaxy to face the consequences of its own arrogance. When senior officials read the report, many felt a slow, sinking dread. This was not weakness. This was control. Some council members attempted one last display of confidence. Public statements were released downplaying the disappearance, calling it a temporary maneuver, an internal human matter. But the words rang hollow. Too many commanders knew better. Fleets do not vanish overnight unless they are designed to. And designs like that are not created by timid civilizations. The laughter from the council chamber became an embarrassment no one wanted to acknowledge. Recordings quietly vanished from public archives. Insults were edited out. History began rewriting itself already. As cycles passed without human response, fear deepened into something colder. Respect edged with dread. The galaxy began to understand that humanity's silence was not confusion or surrender. It was a message written in absence. You cannot control what you cannot touch. You cannot threaten what you cannot find. Humanity had not answered the Council's mockery with words or weapons. It had answered by making itself unreachable. By the end of the second cycle, one question haunted every strategic mind in the galaxy. If humanity could make its entire war fleet disappear without effort, then what else had it never shown? That question echoed through empty command halls and sleepless nights, growing heavier with every unanswered message from Earth. The galaxy had laughed at humanity in public. Now, in private, it waited in fear for the moment when humanity chose to return. While the galaxy panicked and searched empty space for answers, far beyond mapped systems and council sensors, humanity was not lost, and it was not fleeing. Humanity was exactly where it had planned to be for centuries. In regions marked on galactic charts as unstable voids, dead zones, or impossible to navigate anomalies, human fleets existed in perfect silence. These were places where normal sensors failed, where gravity twisted strangely, where hyperspace folded in on itself like a closed fist. Other species avoided these regions out of fear or inability. Humanity had studied them, mapped them, and learned how to live inside them. This was the truth no one else knew. Humanity never relied on being seen. It relied on being unreachable. Inside these dark regions, entire armadas rested in controlled stillness. Engines were powered down to minimal hum. Weapons systems slept, not out of neglect, but discipline. Command ships floated like silent cities, their crews calm, trained, and fully aware of what was happening beyond the shadows. No alarms rang. No orders were shouted. Humanity had prepared for this moment so thoroughly that it felt almost routine. The disappearance was not a reaction. It was a protocol. One that had been designed long before the Galactic Council existed in its current form. Humanity had learned this lesson early in its interstellar history. The first time humans showed strength openly, the galaxy did not welcome them. It tested them. Allies watched closely, enemies formed quietly, and partners demanded access, inspections, control. Humanity realized that visible power invited chains. So it chose another path. A doctrine not of expansion, but of denial. If threatened with control, humanity would remove itself from reach. No leverage. No targets. No pressure points. This doctrine was not weakness. It was survival refined into strategy. As fleets rested in the dark, human command observed the galaxy in silence. Long-range passive sensors listened without emitting signals. Human intelligence watched council panic unfold in real time. They saw emergency meetings, rising military alerts, frantic speculation. Some younger officers felt anger, remembering the mockery, the laughter, the humiliation. Senior commanders stopped them gently. This is not punishment, they reminded them. This is education. Humanity was not hiding out of fear. It was letting the galaxy experience uncertainty for the first time. The same uncertainty humanity had lived with for centuries. Inside the fleets, crews spoke quietly among themselves. Some felt relief. Others felt sadness. Being unseen meant being misunderstood, and many humans had hoped one day to stand openly among the stars as equals. But they also understood the price of that dream. Equality without respect is just vulnerability. Humanity had chosen patience over pride. And now, that patience was reshaping the galaxy without a single shot fired. In council space, the absence began to feel personal. Delegates who had laughed now felt exposed. They replayed the footage of human diplomats bowing and leaving, realizing too late what it truly meant. That bow was not surrender. It was finality. Humanity had heard everything, recorded everything, and then stepped beyond reach. For the first time, the Council faced a species that could not be sanctioned, threatened, or inspected. Power structures built on visibility collapsed under that realization. Military commanders grew increasingly uneasy. They had doubled patrols, activated defenses, but none of it mattered. You cannot guard against an enemy you cannot detect. You cannot plan attacks when you do not know where the battlefield is. Some whispered the word extinction, not because humanity had attacked, but because if humanity ever chose to, no warning would come. The fear was not that humans would strike. It was that they could choose when and where without resistance. Back in the dark zones, human fleets remained still. Not preparing for war. Waiting for understanding. Humanity did not want to destroy the Council. It wanted the Council to learn. To feel what it was like to laugh at a species one moment and lose all certainty the next. To realize that control is an illusion when power chooses silence. This was the emotional core of humanity's response. Not revenge. Not domination. A lesson written in absence. As the third cycle ended, something subtle shifted across the galaxy. The panic slowed. Fear deepened into respect. Worlds began quietly changing behavior. Inspections were postponed. Sanctions discussions faded. The Council stopped demanding and started wondering. That shift was exactly what humanity had intended. When the galaxy stopped trying to control what it could not see, the door would open again. Deep in the void, a senior human commander stood before a panoramic viewport, staring into darkness that hid thousands of ships behind it. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. They laughed because they thought we were small, he said. Now they're silent because they realize we chose not to be seen. Around him, the fleet waited, patient as stars. Humanity had vanished from the galaxy's sight, but its presence had never been heavier. By the fourth cycle, the galaxy no longer pretended everything was under control. The silence had lasted too long, and silence like this was never empty. In the Galactic Council chamber, the atmosphere had changed completely. The seats where delegates once leaned back in confidence were now occupied by tense figures leaning forward, voices lowered, eyes darting toward sensor feeds that refused to show anything useful. The recordings of humanity's humiliation were no longer played. In fact, they were quietly removed from public archives, labeled contextually inappropriate. No one laughed anymore. No one joked. The Council had learned the hardest lesson of power. Mockery has consequences, even when no weapon is fired. Emergency sessions blurred into one another. Delegates argued not about punishment now, but about survival. Some demanded reconciliation. Others insisted on a show of strength, though none could explain what strength meant against an enemy that could not be found. Military advisors spoke carefully, choosing words like unknown posture and non-detectable strategic positioning. Behind those words was fear. Real fear. They admitted that if humanity chose to return violently, there would be no warning. No mobilization window. No defense grid would activate in time. Humanity had rewritten the rules without announcing it. Among the oldest council members, those who remembered ancient wars, a deeper dread took root. They had seen this pattern before in long-dead civilizations. The quiet ones were never the weakest. They were the ones who had learned restraint through suffering. Humanity's disappearance was not the move of a panicked species. It was the move of one that had calculated every outcome and selected the one that caused the least destruction while delivering the strongest message. That realization stripped the council of its moral high ground. Humanity had responded to humiliation not with violence, but with control. And that made the council look reckless by comparison. Across the galaxy, political pressure mounted. Smaller worlds demanded answers from the council. You insulted them, some said openly. Now we all pay the price. Trade coalitions froze agreements. Insurance networks collapsed under uncertainty. Every system felt exposed, because if humanity could vanish so completely, then the galaxy's entire security model was flawed. Visibility had always been mistaken for safety. Now invisibility ruled every thought. The council, once proud of its authority, realized it had lost the one thing that mattered most. Credibility. Inside intelligence circles, new theories emerged, darker and more disturbing. Analysts began to suspect that humanity had not simply hidden its fleets, but distributed them. That the absence was an illusion. That human warships might already be positioned near key systems, unseen, untraceable, waiting. The thought alone caused command staff to hesitate before issuing even routine orders. Every action felt like it might provoke something watching silently from the dark. Fear without an enemy drains confidence faster than war ever could. Emotionally, the council fractured. Some delegates felt guilt, replaying their own words of mockery, realizing they had pushed humanity into a corner where silence was the only answer left. Others felt anger, not at humanity, but at themselves, at a system that mistook noise for strength and politeness for weakness. The chamber that once celebrated unity now reflected regret. For the first time, the council understood how fragile its authority truly was. It ruled only as long as others accepted being ruled. Humanity had quietly stepped beyond that acceptance. In human space, still sealed and silent, life continued calmly. That contrast unsettled observers most of all. No mass evacuations. No panic broadcasts. No war speeches. Humanity behaved like a species fully in control of its fate. That emotional imbalance terrified the galaxy. The Council had expected chaos after the disappearance. Instead, it saw discipline, order, confidence. Humanity was not afraid of what it had done. Humanity had planned for it. As the fourth cycle ended, a consensus formed quietly among council leaders, though none dared announce it publicly. They had underestimated humanity, and that mistake could not be undone with force. Only humility might reopen dialogue. The galaxy had laughed at Earth in public. Now, behind closed doors, it whispered humanity's name with caution. Silence had become the loudest voice in the room, and it belonged entirely to humanity. The council chamber lights dimmed as another emergency session adjourned without resolution. No sanctions were passed. No threats were issued. For the first time in its history, the council chose to wait. And in that waiting, it finally understood what humanity had been trying to teach all along. Power does not need permission. It only needs patience to be why the fifth cycle, the galaxy was no longer reacting to humanity's disappearance, it was living inside it. What began as shock had settled into a constant, exhausting tension that touched every world, every fleet, every decision. The stars looked the same, trade lanes still glowed on navigation charts, but something essential had changed. The assumption that the galaxy understood its own balance of power was gone. Humanity had removed itself so completely that no one could pretend control still existed. And that absence weighed heavier each passing day. Military commands across council space found themselves trapped in hesitation. Orders were delayed. Exercises were cancelled. Fleet movements were reduced to the bare minimum, not because of weakness, but because no commander wanted to be the one who triggered humanity's return. Every sensor anomaly caused alarms. Every unexplained distortion led to emergency briefings. Even natural stellar phenomena were scrutinized with suspicion. Fear did not explode into chaos. It condensed into caution. A galaxy once loud with authority had grown careful, almost fragile, under the pressure of not knowing. Civilians felt it too, in quiet, personal ways. Merchants noticed how buyers hesitated before signing contracts. Travelers felt uneasy boarding ships, glancing at the dark beyond viewports, wondering what might be watching unseen. On some worlds, children asked their parents why the news talked about Earth so softly now, when it used to mock it so openly. Parents struggled to answer. How do you explain to a child that silence can be more powerful than armies? How do you explain that a species once laughed at had taught the galaxy fear without lifting a weapon? Within the Galactic Council, the emotional strain became unbearable. Delegates slept poorly, haunted by the memory of their own laughter echoing through the chamber. Some avoided public appearances altogether. Others tried to regain control by proposing new regulations, new monitoring systems, new alliances. None of it mattered. Every proposal died the same way. What if humanity responds? That question ended debates faster than any veto. The Council had lost its ability to act decisively, not because it was attacked, but because it had been outplayed. Privately, some Council members began to admit the truth they could never say aloud. Humanity's response had been perfect. Not cruel. Not violent. Perfect. It punished arrogance without creating martyrs. It dismantled authority without firing a shot. It forced reflection instead of retaliation. That realization was deeply uncomfortable. The Council had always believed itself to be the stabilizing force of the galaxy. Now it had to face the possibility that it had been the destabilizing one all along. In the dark zones beyond mapped space, human fleets remained still, their crews watching the galaxy adjust to a new reality. Emotional weight pressed on them too, but it was different. Many felt a quiet sadness knowing the path humanity had chosen meant isolation, at least for a time. Others felt resolve harden. This was the price of dignity. Humanity had been mocked because it allowed itself to be treated lightly. That era was over. Silence was no longer avoidance. Silence was boundary. Human commanders reviewed reports showing how behavior across the galaxy was changing. Inspections halted. Aggressive patrols pulled back. Rhetoric softened. Without saying a word, humanity had achieved something it never could through war. It had forced the galaxy to self-regulate, to question its instincts, to fear its own arrogance. That knowledge brought no joy, only clarity. Power, when used correctly, does not shout. It waits. Emotionally, the most difficult realization came from a simple truth. Humanity did not want this tension to last forever. It had never wanted to disappear completely. It wanted respect. It wanted autonomy. It wanted to exist without being managed, inspected, or mocked. Now the galaxy was close to understanding that. But understanding born from fear is fragile. Human leadership knew the silence could not stretch endlessly. At some point, humanity would need to speak again. Not to threaten. Not to explain. But to define the future. Across council space, a quiet shift began. Smaller species, once too afraid to speak against the council, started questioning old hierarchies. If humanity could step outside control, they asked, why can't we? That thought terrified the council more than fleets ever could. Authority built on assumption crumbles when examples appear. Humanity had become that example. Not through conquest, but through absence. By the end of the fifth cycle, one undeniable truth had spread across the stars. The galaxy was no longer afraid of what humanity might do. It was afraid of what humanity might choose not to do. Because if humanity could vanish once, it could vanish again. And a galaxy that relies on control cannot survive when control no longer exists. In the silence, in the waiting, in the uncertainty, the galaxy finally began to understand the depth of its mistake. It had mocked Earth in public, believing power must always be visible. Now it lived in a future where the strongest presence was the one no one could see, and that knowledge would never leave them. The sixth cycle arrived with a tension so thick that even routine galactic traffic felt heavy, as if ships were pushing through unseen resistance. The galaxy had adjusted to humanity's absence, but it had not grown comfortable with it. Waiting had become a constant ache, because no one knew how long silence would last, or what it would mean when it finally ended. Then, without warning, without build-up, humanity spoke. Not with a fleet movement. Not with a weapon test. With a single message that appeared across every major channel, every relay, every council archive at the same exact moment, as if space itself had agreed to carry it. The message was short, calm, clear. It did not accuse. It did not threaten. Humanity did not vanish to escape responsibility. Humanity vanished to remove leverage. We will return to visibility when respect replaces control. That was all. No signature. No timestamp. No follow-up. The galaxy froze. Because those words reframed everything. Humanity had not been hiding. Humanity had been setting terms. In the Galactic Council chamber, delegates sat in stunned silence, reading the same message again and again, searching for hidden meaning, coded threats, anything they could use to regain footing. There was nothing to twist. Nothing to argue with. The words were precise, almost gentle, and that gentleness carried weight. It told the Council that humanity did not see them as enemies to be crushed, but as systems that needed correction. That realization was humiliating in a way no military defeat could ever be. Humanity was not reacting emotionally. Humanity was teaching. Emotion rippled outward across the galaxy. On worlds that had once laughed at Earth, citizens felt a strange mix of relief and shame. Relief that humanity had finally spoken, that the waiting had an end. Shame that the words were so reasonable, so restrained, so undeniably fair. Parents sat with children and tried to explain why a powerful species would choose silence over dominance. Because they were tired of being handled, some said quietly. Because they wanted to be left alone, others answered. The truth was simpler and harder. Humanity wanted to be treated as an equal, and it had chosen the only language the galaxy would finally listen to. Military commands reacted not with aggression, but with recalibration. Orders were rewritten. Postures softened. Patrol routes were adjusted farther from human space. The message made one thing clear. Any attempt to force humanity back into visibility would only deepen the divide. The galaxy had pushed once and lost control of the outcome. No one wanted to repeat that mistake. Silence had become humanity's shield, and the galaxy finally understood it could not be shattered by pressure. Within the hidden fleets, the message brought emotional release. Crews who had waited in stillness for cycles felt tension ease from their shoulders. Humanity had spoken, and it had spoken well. Not in anger. Not in fear. With dignity. Commanders gathered their crews and reminded them why they were there. We are not ghosts, they said. We are guardians of choice. The words mattered. Humanity's power was not in disappearance alone, but in the ability to choose when to be present. That choice had been taken away before. Now it was reclaimed. On Earth, leaders watched the galactic response carefully. They saw council rhetoric soften overnight. They saw inspection demands quietly withdrawn. They saw old insults vanish from official records. Humanity had not asked for apologies, and none were offered publicly, but behavior changed. That change meant more than words ever could. Respect was not being declared. It was being practiced. Slowly, carefully, as it should be. Emotionally, this was the hardest part for humanity. Speaking meant risk. Revealing intent meant opening a door that had been closed for safety. But the alternative was endless tension, a galaxy held hostage by uncertainty. Humanity chose clarity instead. Not full revelation. Not fleet displays. Just enough to guide the future. The message was a bridge, not a threat, and everyone could feel it. In the council, a quiet consensus formed. The era of mocking humanity was over. The era of managing humanity was over. Any future relationship would be built on consent or not at all. That understanding did not come with celebration. It came with humility. Delegates who had once demanded inspections now spoke of dialogue. Those who had laughed now chose their words carefully. The council had been taught restraint by a species it had once dismissed. As the sixth cycle closed, something remarkable happened. The galaxy exhaled. Not fully, not comfortably, but enough to move forward. Humanity had not returned its fleets to view. It had not reclaimed the spotlight. It had simply spoken once and then gone quiet again. And that choice reshaped everything. Silence was no longer a threat. It was a boundary clearly marked. Far beyond the Council's reach, human fleets remained in the dark, steady and patient. They had done their work without firing a shot. They had turned mockery into caution, arrogance into reflection. The galaxy was learning, slowly and painfully, what humanity had always known. Power does not need to prove itself loudly. Sometimes, it only needs to speak once, and then let the silence do the rest. By the seventh cycle, the galaxy no longer felt like the same place it had been before humanity vanished. The stars were unchanged, the trade lanes still burned their familiar lines across navigation maps, but something deeper had shifted, something that could not be undone. Humanity's single message had not ended the silence, it had transformed it. Silence was no longer absence. It was presence without permission. And the galaxy had learned to live with that truth. In the Galactic Council chamber, the change was visible in every small detail. Delegates arrived earlier, spoke slower, listened longer. No one raised their voice anymore. Earth's name was no longer followed by laughter or insults. It was spoken carefully, sometimes not at all. The Council did not pass new laws about humanity. It did not dare. Instead, it rewrote itself. Inspection protocols were quietly removed. Mandatory oversight clauses vanished from documents without explanation. No announcement was made, because none was needed. Everyone understood why. Control only exists when both sides accept it, and humanity no longer did. Across the galaxy, worlds adjusted their behavior instinctively. Fleets kept respectful distance from human space, even though no human ships were visible. Trade routes were redrawn to avoid appearing aggressive. Diplomatic language softened everywhere, not just toward Earth, but toward all quieter species. Humanity's disappearance had done something unexpected. It had protected others too. The galaxy had been forced to confront how often it confused noise with strength and silence with weakness. That confusion was gone now, replaced by caution and, slowly, maturity. On human worlds, life moved forward with a quiet pride that never turned into arrogance. Humanity did not celebrate its disappearance as a victory. It mourned the fact that it had been necessary at all. Children learned the story not as a tale of dominance, but as a lesson in dignity. Teachers explained that humanity had not vanished to scare the galaxy, but to stop being humiliated. To reclaim the right to choose how it was seen. That understanding shaped a generation that valued restraint more than applause. Within the hidden fleets, commanders began rotating long-term watch schedules. Some ships powered down further, settling into deeper silence. Others repositioned slightly, maintaining balance without revealing patterns. The armadas remained unseen, but they were no longer tense. Their purpose had been fulfilled. They were no longer waiting for conflict. They were guarding a lesson. One that did not need repetition. Humanity had shown it could disappear. The galaxy would never forget that. There was no need to prove it again. Emotionally, the heaviest realization settled over the Council like a shadow it could not shake. Humanity had not asked for punishment. It had not demanded apologies. It had not even demanded recognition. All it had done was step away. And in doing so, it had exposed how fragile galactic authority truly was. Power built on assumption collapses the moment someone refuses to play along. That truth haunted Council members more than fear ever had. They knew now that humanity did not need to rule the galaxy to change it. It had already done so by leaving. Years later, historians would mark this era not as a war, not as a crisis, but as a correction. The moment the galaxy learned that respect cannot be enforced, only earned. In Council archives, the record of humanity's humiliation remained sealed, accessible only to high-level scholars. It was studied not with shame, but with humility. Every student of galactic politics learned the same lesson. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never laugh at silence. Because silence might be a choice, and choice is the purest form of power. At some point, long after fear had faded into understanding, humanity slowly returned to partial visibility. Not fleets. Not armadas. Just presence. Diplomatic channels reopened. Trade resumed on equal terms. Human ships appeared again, modest and calm, exactly as before. The galaxy accepted them differently this time. No inspections were demanded. No mocking comments followed. The silence had done its work. Humanity did not need to explain itself. Everyone already knew. And so, when future generations looked back and asked why the galaxy changed so suddenly, why arrogance gave way to caution almost overnight, the answer was always the same. They mocked Earth at the Council. They believed silence meant weakness. By dawn, humanity's war fleets were gone, as if they had never existed. And in that disappearance, the galaxy learned the most important lesson it would ever know. That the most powerful response is sometimes not to strike, not to shout, not to conquer, but to walk away and let the universe feel the weight of your absence.